Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate and lay the foundation of projects worth around 18,000 crore during his two-day tour of Assam. Now, the significant thing here is that Northeast India in the last 10 years of the Modi government has seen an unprecedented focus on infrastructure, development and conflict resolution. Joining me to discuss Prime Minister Modi's Northeast makeover are Manash Deka of the BJP and my colleague Kartikeya Sharma here in the studio. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Kartikeya, I want to start by asking you, the Northeast for several decades, not years, decades, it's been off New Delhi's radar. There are geographical issues there. It's just separated by a chicken neck of territory, 20 kilometers. And it's surrounded by foreign countries. It's way beyond Delhi's radar. There's a security challenge there. When did the Northeast become a priority for infrastructure development for this government? And why is it such a big deal?
It's a big deal because Prime Minister Narendra Modi ensured that there is special attention for Northeast. Even the donor ministry was conceived when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. So he carried forward the work. A lot of projects were passed during UPA government, certain projects were passed during the earlier NDA government.
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi completed them. So infrastructure became the priority. Prime Minister visited Northeast for more than 60 times. He made ministers stay there for days, so it did not become a sort of a Northeast sojourn that people would go there and come back. He made them stay there and understand it. Fourth and most important thing, he ensured that the entrepreneurship is encouraged. In Meghalaya, especially the experiment which were done in the healthcare system did very well. Then you had those border villages which Kiran Rijiju openly talks about, was about national security. That was also a very important thing. Entire northeastern board is being fenced despite the fact that the Prime Minister initiated Look East, Act East politics, but security concerns have overtaken those issues. So, I think nimble-footedness, working on multiple front, putting Northeast at center stage, not through news or not through some agitation, but by ensuring that the developmental process reach there. And it is for this reason you have a train link to Manipur.
Right.
Dimapur-Kohima national highway or the state highway was such a torture. I had covered election. I used to stay in Dimapur and then travel to Kohima. It would take me more than 3 hours.
Right.
It is not even 100 kilometers, more than 3 hours.
Right.
And now, you have a road.
Yes.
So people don't understand that in Northeast, there was a systematic corruption.
Yes.
There was a road on paper, but the people wouldn't build roads. It would get siphoned off. So all you had was like Congo,
Yeah.
You had a dirt road.
Right.
So I think Prime Minister very diligently tackled all those issues.
Right.
And I would say that is making Northeast tick.
Yeah, that's making Northeast tick. And Manash, how are these projects kind of played out on the ground? The BJP's unnerving focus on the Northeast, especially with infrastructure projects. This region, as Kartikeya just mentioned, you had dirt tracks there. It would take you hours to reach any part of the Northeast from one part to the other, and it was a military issue as well because you could not move men and material at the speeds at which you can do now. How is this played out on the ground now, Manash? How things changed in the last 10 years?
Okay, thank you for inviting me to your show. Let me explain from the very beginning how the whole journey started. If we see the Northeast, it was facing problem not from today, it was facing from the independence time.
Right.
So when into NDA came in during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee time, he started the donor ministry. That was the milestone development of the Northeast. So when Prime Minister was having various responsibility in the BJP party, he traveled across and in and out of the northeastern region.
Right.
And he knows the pain of the people, where people are lacking, where infrastructure is lacking, and what are the areas things need to be done. So if we see from 2014 onwards, the development of Northeast, the actual development of Northeast have started. So Honorable Prime Minister, as you know, he will be visiting 8th and 9th on Mars tomorrow. So he will be having a plethora of developmental projects for our region. I'll give you a few brief idea what are the different development projects he will start.
Right.
For example, he will be unveiling the 125 feet statue of Bir Lasit Barphukan, which is, it will be known as Statue of Valor. He is the hero of our India. Number one. Then number two, Honorable Prime Minister will be distributing, it's a record also, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
555,555
Right.
Pradhan Mantri Awas beneficiaries.
Yep. Right.
He will also be dedicating the Tinsukia Medical College. He will be having a medical college in Shivsagar. Then
Yes.
he will be having around 3,000 crore. There is a pediatric adult center also he will inaugurate.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. But Manash, the most important thing, here in Delhi, what we're looking at Assam very closely is the fact that the Prime Minister is inaugurating a chip plant, the TSAT plant in Morigaon. And I, in fact, have Anurag Awasthi of the Indian Semiconductors Association. Anurag, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Tell us why this semiconductor plant is such a big deal for Assam and why it really puts the Northeast on the semiconductor map of India.
Thanks for inviting me over. Sandeep, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Wonderful. So, when you look at the Northeast, we have to look at a couple of very important things that, Northeast is primed for development of the industrial parks, so to say. There is a tremendous potential in the northeastern region for trade, business, as well as industries. And that's a region which has generally been left avoided or, has not been addressed for a very, very long time insofar as the industrial infrastructure is concerned. Now, in addition to that, you were just speaking in terms of the connectivity and various other issues which hinge on security aspects and all of that. When you look at it, as Robert Kaplan says, it's the revenge of the geography.
Yes.
I mean, you look at Assam, it is strategically located and it's actually reaching out to the wider ASEAN region.
Yes.
Just look at it. It's abundant in natural resources, energy. Look at the kind of hydel energy which is available in the northeastern region, especially in that area, and human capital. See, the labor at the end of the day is on a lower cost as compared to the others.
Right.
And when you are looking at, other TSAT coming up there, there's the assembly and packaging plant, you don't require too much of, trained manpower insofar as, high-tech manpower which is concerned. So it is available. So human capital is available. Then there's connectivity. It's well connected. And of course, then it has a large amount of, shall I say, academia infrastructure. It has IIT Guwahati close by. And, a lot of people may not know, Sandeep. There are 53 engineering colleges in Assam.
Yes.
Out of which, if my statistics are correct, somewhere around 21 or 22 are government owned. And they're doing some cutting edge work. So Assam makes a great business case. And I think it is going to be the gateway to the Northeast insofar as high tech is concerned.
Yeah, a very important development there, Kartikeya. We never saw Assam as a potential gateway to the electronics thing, as Anurag Awasthi was mentioning. But, there is also the elephant in the room. The violence in Manipur, right? That seems to be the one dark spot on whatever the government has achieved in the last decade.
More than the central government, I would say that it was responsibility of the state government.
Yes.
I would see Manipur from the context of Biren Singh's mismanagement. It was not at all, I would say, in fact, I have covered it, central leadership was completely taken aback by the development. And even in Manipur, I would say that yes, there have been problems, but if you compare it with other insurgencies, for example, the Nelly massacre that took place, or the Bru displacement that has taken place, I'm not trying to justify anything, but I think roughly 200 to 300 people have died. But in Northeast, you had violent episodes in which thousands of people have died. You had to use Indira Gandhi had to use Air Force. Assam, the riots which took place in 1980s when Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister and Assam Gan Parishad was in control of the state government. Those were different dimensions. The entire state was shut down. Yes, there is a divide which has taken place, but I think it requires working more at a state level. But I would again like to re-emphasize that what has Prime Minister done? Prime Minister has simultaneously, and I'm not saying this because today Prime Minister went to Bakshi Stadium, this exclusivism, Kashmir and Northeast need to be treated in an exclusive way. He broke that paradigm. And why I say this, you have Article 371 A, B, C, D, E, those are different issues. But Prime Minister ensured that the measures which are being taken in central India, North India are being implemented. I said, for example, in Meghalaya's healthcare system, or the border villages, or for example, investment infrastructure which spurs growth, connectivity. For example, in his first tenure, Prime Minister Modi organized DGP conference in Guwahati.
Yes.
It was the first time it was taken out. So it went to Guwahati. He took it to Northeast. Ministers being made to stay. So there's a concerted effort on part of Prime Minister Modi to ensure that imagination of Northeast is not exclusive to the imagination of large India. It is integral to India.
It's integral to India. In fact, I have Rami Desai here joining us on the line. Rami, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. And you know, the point that Kartikeya just made, the fact that the exclusiveness of regions, the border regions, sensitive border regions like the Northeast and Jammu and Kashmir have kind of they've taken a back seat in the sense that they've been integrated into the mainstream India. How do you see this playing out in the last decade or so? What do you think are the challenges in the years ahead?
Well, good evening to the both of you. And as always, you know, I'm so appreciative that your channel always follows up on the stories of the Northeast. Now,
that's Kartikeya who's been doing an excellent job in tracking the Northeast, bringing the Northeast to the mainstream. And you can take singular credit for that.
Thank you.
You know, but it is very important to note this because I have been following the Northeast since, you know, the last, I don't know, over a decade, you know, since 2007, 8 and before that. And, you know, I have, and I consider myself very lucky because I have this privilege to be able to see what it was, what it became and what it is today. And, you know, hopefully, you know, the potential that it has in the future. And that goes across all spectrums, you know, the kind of security initiatives that have been taken, you know, keeping in mind not just the security of the Northeast, but, you know, how integral the Northeast region is to the rest of the country. Therefore, national security, you know, we can't really compare it to Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir has always been at the forefront of media attention, of, you know, sort of diplomatic conversations because, you know, there was Pakistan involved, there was Jammu Kashmir, involved.
And China, of course,
And China, and of course, you know, the West had vested interests in these regions. So, you know, there was that kind of interest in Jammu and Kashmir. Unfortunately, the Northeast, which has larger, more complex borders, then even Jammu and Kashmir was completely ignored. You know, now strategically also it was ignored because, you know, there's given the space for a lot of international invested agencies to do what they wanted to on this playground that nobody was paying attention to. But what it also did was, you know, it just was seen as so complex because the Northeast, because of the kind of prolonged ignoring of the region that has happened since colonial times, that nobody knew much about it. So it was intimidating. You know, there were all these ethnic tribal communities.
It was seen as a very exotic kind of region, the way it was during the times of the British, I guess.
But you know, I must, you know, interject here and say, you know, exotic was for the British. Exotic wasn't for us, you know.
Not at all.
For us, this has always in our civilizational imagination, you know, always been a part of our imagination, not just the Northeast, but beyond. You know, it was because of this alien lens that was applied on that it became exotic, that became so distant. If you look at geographically also how it's been cut, and this is again by the British, who were the worst cartographers in the world. Wherever they've drawn a boundary, there's been a problem. Look at this chicken's neck. You know, the 22-kilometer ill-imagined landmass that joins, making again communication, travel, logistics so much more difficult. Again, you know, that ties into the whole argument of why, you know, that answers why the Northeast has always been not just psychologically, but geographically distant from us. You know, so now all of this has played out into what changed in 2014. Now, 2014, what really happened is, and you know, this was not suddenly something that the government envisioned just as they got power. Because I was in these areas, I lived in these areas, I have traveled to some of the most conflict-ridden places and lived there, I realized what had happened was that the BJP had always been working towards making the Northeast an integral part of their future plans.
Right.
Even as back as 2008,
Yes.
they had people working in the remotest of areas. Of course, there were other organizations like Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram, there was,
Yes.
organizations like such that were again in all these remote areas doing what they could for the upliftment of communities there, which were forgotten by
Right.
some,
So, Rami, very good points there. In fact, I want to bring Manash in on this. Exactly the point that you made, that it was a political project of the BJP and the RSS Sangh Parivar. They worked there for many, many decades while not being in political power in the Northeast. Manash, what explains the BJP's laser-like focus and of course the RSS's focus on the Northeast and integrating the tribal communities, integrating the communities of the Northeast into the mainstream India?
Well, Northeast is, as you know, having almost most of the area's land is covered by tribal people.
Yes.
And every tribal has their, own some regulations, their own rule book. It's there. But if we see the whole area was getting disconnected.
Right.
So when we see the, as you asked me, when we see the BJP has a long-term plan for Northeast, and which is coming, we are able to see right now. And it has connected not only politically, but culturally also. The people of Northeast has connected with the mainstream India right now.
Right.
People now understand that how Prime Minister Modi is loving the people of Northeast, and he is himself monitoring each and every project.
Yes.
So that Northeast is connected with the rest of the Asian countries and with our mainland countries.
Right, absolutely.
So this is a small plan. This is a very big plan, as our honorable other guests are also acknowledging the thing. It's a long-term plan, and in the coming days, you'll see Northeast will be the hub for the, it will be one of the major hubs for business areas in the whole country.
Right, absolutely. On the 9th of March, the Prime Minister will inaugurate the Saar Tunnel, which is the world's highest bi-lane tunnel. It's located at 14,000 feet. It will help the Indian Army rush troops and supplies to Tawang through all weather conditions. In fact, my colleague Nivriti Mohan traveled there to get an exclusive look at the Saar Tunnel, and she spoke with the engineers who built this incredible miracle of civil engineering. Download the News9 Plus app and watch our exclusive story by Nivriti Mohan.
Saar, the longest bi-lane tunnel in the world at 13,000 feet, ensures all-weather connectivity to the line of actual control. Faster movement of troops to the borders connects India's mainland to strategically important Tawang sector. Built in Arunachal in territory once occupied by China in 1962, the tunnel is giving sleepless nights to India's hostile neighbor.
This tunnel and many other such projects, a better sustenance capability both for the civilians in this area as well as for the military.
During the winters, it becomes a formidable obstacle for the traffic to go over the Saar Pass.
The Saar Tunnel is around 30 to 40 kilometers aerial distance from the border, quite in a close proximity to the border, I would say.
Kartikeya, while we are on the Saar Tunnel, there is also this issue of the springboard of the Northeast into Myanmar and to the ASEAN countries, as the panelists were mentioning. But the troubles in Myanmar seem to have blocked our access to the ASEAN countries. How much of a challenge is that?
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. In one of the discussions, when Rami was participating with me on Manipur, I recall that there was a discussion, because if you look at the geography of Northeast, because the gentleman very rightly said the revenge of the geography, Kaplan. The northeastern markets are traditionally, we don't imagine them from the context of Chittagong track and Cox's Bazar.
It was all part integrated actually.
It was an integrated market. So I think with the Kaladan project, the problem which you are referring to, which goes
Yes.
through More.
Right.
I think we need to reimagine that corridor from Cox's Bazar, which is now
Yes.
slightly problematic because of the Rohingya influx,
Right.
and Chittagong track. That's the Tripura route which the government of India will have to take. It will be easier, far more integrated. So we'll have to reimagine the geography. And anyway, we have very good terms with Bangladesh. So I don't think it should be a problem. But it's an issue. Do we want to do this? How do we do this? Is it as profitable as the More corridor would have been connecting Myanmar? And with the civil war in Myanmar, I'm sure nothing is going to happen for next 2 decades.
Right. In fact, Kartikeya did this interview with Tuhin Sinha and Aditya Pitti, who've edited a book, Modi's Northeast Story. Essays by Himanta Biswa, Kiran Rijiju and Pema Khandu are part of this book. Let's listen into an excerpt of that interview.
What made you edit this book, Modi's Northeast Story? What prompted you?
Well, as Prime Minister Modi completes 10 years in office, definitely the positive transformation of our northeastern states is one of the biggest achievements of Modi government. And I think we have completely done away with the alibi which Congress used to employ every now and then, called the tyranny of distance. So I think, today there is a seamless cohesion between Northeast and the rest of the country. CapEx spend of more than 4 lakh crores in the last 10 years in development of infrastructure in the Northeast, wherein the total number of airports have gone up from 8 to 17, where the total stretch of national highways have gone up by nearly 50% or probably beyond that. And we have rail connectivity right up to Arunachal and parts of Manipur and large swathes of Nagaland. In fact, that explains the massive changes, because that has not merely bridged the infrastructural gaps, that has also done away with the cultural, that has also brought about a huge cultural unison, because I think 3 particular episodes from the past had left a scar upon the people of Northeast. One was in 1962, where Nehru virtually abdicated his responsibility by saying, "My heart goes out to the people of Assam." Nefa, a particular district in Arunachal, which was then NEFA, Northeastern Frontier Agency, when it was being taken over by Chinese, he very callously said, "My heart goes out to the people of Northeast," and that had left a scar upon the people for many years. Then obviously there was the bombing of Mizoram in 1965, the Nelai massacre of 1984. All of these had left a huge scar, which today stands completely done away with.
Anurag, finally, how long is this semiconductor plant in Assam going to take to come up, and how much of a significant game changer is it going to be for India's semiconductor thrust?
Sandeep, let me give you a couple of pointers. Firstly, if you look at Assam and you look at the state GDP and the industries contributing to the state GDP, I think it's 30% last year, which is increasing steadily.
Right.
This plant is going to be looking at 15,000 direct jobs and nearly 16,000 indirect jobs. Can you imagine the scale of employment that it is going to be generating? When you're looking at TSAT, it is looking at 27,000 crore investment. Basically, it is one big ticket which will catalyze the most of the MSMEs in the country. The backbone of this country is the MSME.
Yep.
You catalyze MSME and you see the magic. This is the prowess of this country. Then look at the other paradigm of Industry 4.0 revolution in the state. There will be socio-economic issues. I mean, I also must put it on record. When I was with somebody the other day who's a very senior man in Tata Electronics, and he happened to tell me about the Tata Electronics plant in Krishnagiri. I was so amazed to hear that nearly 70 to 75% of the workforce in that plant, which is looking at critical electronics, is women. Right. Most of them are tribal women who have got empowered in a manner which is transformational. You can't even imagine. The same thing will happen here. Look at that. And then, we also must not whisk away the PSMC. The Taiwanese behemoth, which is, joining hands with the Tatas, which is as it is a very, very important entity in India. As of 2020, it was the 7th largest foundry in the world. And this is the first time PSMC is coming out of Taiwan to make such a foray and establishing something as a joint venture with somebody, especially in India. And this is a company, when you look at PSMC, I will not go into
Yes.
statistics of the market share and so on and so forth, but it's a very, very big supplier to automotive segment. And you know the Indian automotive industry, how large it is. It is the second or third largest in the world, and the way it's going is, I think it's moving by leaps and bounds.
Right.
And no points for guessing. Maybe Tesla is around the corner. So there's a lot of things. There are a lot of things which may take place as time goes by. So
As time goes by,
big
exactly.
foray into
Yes.
the
Into
a big foray
semiconductors.
into the yes, a big foray into the automotive market, a big foray into the memory market, which which is going to be a very, very big thing to happen of the world's a world-known company which has one of the 7th largest foundries in the world at Hsinchu in Taiwan. So I think all in all, an outstanding outreach and outstanding decision by the government of India.
Right.
And a game changer for the Northeast in terms of high technology.
Absolutely. A game changer for the Northeast in terms of high technology. Who would have imagined a semiconductor plant being set up in Assam? And that's what we're going to see in the days ahead. And of course, the Saar Tunnel, and that's among the many other transformational projects that we've seen in the last decade in India's Northeast. So thank you very much to my panelists for joining us this evening. Prime Minister Modi's Northeast Makeover, high on our agenda, news agenda for the next couple of days. Americans will elect their next president on the 5th of November this year. It's going to be a rematch of the 2020 US presidential elections. It's Trump versus Biden once more. In fact, it's the first US election rematch in almost 70 years. And Donald Trump could make history if he wins it. He could be the first US president in 127 years to win non-consecutive terms. Joining me to discuss this, our Ambassador Yogesh Gupta and my colleague Neha Khanna and Irina Sukerman, who joins us from New York. Welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Neha, ab ki baar Trump sarkar?
Well, if you ask Trump supporters, they will
Yeah.
say, of course, that's the way it's going to be. You know, firstly, let me tell you, Sandeep, that for a vast majority of
Yeah.
Americans, polls show this is actually a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
You know, they just did not want to see a Trump-Biden rematch. They
Right.
believe they're between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
Very little to choose between the two.
Right.
If I could quickly outline what I think are the
Yes.
biggest challenges that the two leaders face going into this election. Talking about Biden, well, his age is a huge factor.
Yeah.
His apparent frailty, forgetfulness, his gaffes, which Trump supporters do not fail to remind the people about.
Yeah.
There is a lot of anger over his unpopular immigration policies,
Yes.
again something that Trump has gone out of his way to capitalize on. And of late, there's also been a lot of anger, especially amongst the Arab Americans, over Biden's unflinching support to Israel's war in Gaza.
Yes.
Those are some of the biggest challenges that Biden faces going into this election.
Right.
You know, Biden would have liked to believe that he's handled the economy well.
Yes.
Because fact of the matter is that American economy is doing far better than expected.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Better than most others.
Right.
Yet, the Americans are not convinced. They are very angry about the high cost of living and inflation, and therefore not willing to give any credit
Right.
to Biden for the handling of the economy. However, what can work in favor of Biden and goes against Trump. Number one, a lot of people will remind you about his personality,
Yes.
that he is who he is, the fact that he's seen as a very divisive figure. Many
Right.
have called him an insurrectionist. The Capitol Hill riots still haunt him.
Yep.
The multiple indictments against him, the criminal cases that he faces. Also, abortion rights are a very emotive issue in the US, and
Yes.
therefore most of those who are pushing for those rights would not want to see a Republican in the White House. And I think one big advantage that Biden also has is that between now and the election, which is still 8 months away, he has plenty of time to course correct.
Right.
If he's able to woo back some of the angry voters,
Yes.
let's say he takes a tougher stance on Israel, manages to secure a ceasefire in Gaza,
Right.
and manages to woo the fence sitters,
Right.
then, well, it could very well go his way. But I think at the moment, it would be safe to say it is anybody's election, Sandeep.
It's anybody's
it is expected
election.
to be a
Indeed.
very close contest, one that either candidate could actually win by merely tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands, in fact, as narrow as it was 4 years back. And Irina, this, we've heard for the longest time that it's the economy is stupid, right? Now, the US economy is firing on all cylinders, as Neha just mentioned, is growing at over 2.2%, and it's belied all expectations of a recession. It's come out strong, unemployment is at its lowest, inflation is down. But despite that, you have President Biden who's struggling. How are all these other factors going to impact on his presidential election in November? The facts that Neha mentioned, you know, the Israel war that's going on against him, immigration, all the other factors except the economy.
Well, actually, surprisingly, despite the fact that according to all the indicators, the economy is doing well, many people are still blaming Biden for previous issues during the course of his tenure. They're not giving him credit necessarily for the strong economy. Also, the inflation is still a factor, and many people are still angry over that. So I would not discount the economy as an issue affecting Biden, even though it should be in his favor. Immigration, however, is the single biggest factor deciding this battle. It is, according to the polls, it's the strongest issue. It has become a #1 issue, and for the voters since 2019, in over 5 years, and other indicators show that the number of people detained at the border is the highest possibly in history. It's gone up to 8 million people who are currently in detention, and that's aside from the rest who have been processed and awaiting assorted hearings across the country or have been deported. So we are seeing a huge influx of migration, and it's across the border, and that has become a bipartisan issue.
Right.
So on the one hand, Biden is suffering from the fact that overall he's perceived as to have been extremely weak on this issue, especially in the beginning of the term. Trump is running on this issue, but on the other hand, the Republicans have made a huge mistake, in my opinion. They have allowed Trump to try to essentially freeze the issue in Congress so that he could run on it come November after the official nominations process, and that's hurting them. That's hurting them because on the one hand they're saying we're dealing with a huge crisis and a catastrophe, and that is true, by the way. On the other hand, they're refusing to do anything about it, and they're making the perfect the enemy of the good. They're refusing to support the bipartisan bill proposed by Senate or any other measures that were proposed earlier, which gives the Democrats, Biden, an opening to put a freeze on the border issues through an executive order. Not an ideal situation, but that is something that he may be willing to do. He has hesitated to do so in order to not alienate more left-leaning voters, but this measure would allocate more resources towards essentially deporting more people en masse, and this is something that Trump is also promising to do. But Biden can do so immediately, whereas Trump has to wait until January of next year to do that. So I think the voters are quite angry. The Israel war, or any foreign policy for that matter, is playing less of a role than what people may think, based on the noise coming from the progressive circles. Actually, in Michigan, where over 100,000 people voted non-committed, overall, the support for Biden went slightly up from 2020, which indicates that these people may not be much of a factor come November at all, and that's even regarding the fact that Trump...
Irina, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. I'm going to bring in Ambassador Gupta here. Ambassador Gupta, how is New Delhi seeing these two candidates? It's a as Neha said, it's for the Americans, it's a fight between the rock and a hard place, right? They're caught between a rock and a hard place. A candidate who's 71 years old and another one who's 81 years, 74 and 81.
76 and 81.
76 and 81, I stand corrected. Has New Delhi got the measure of both these candidates? We've seen 4 years of Trump, we've seen almost 4 years of Biden. Are we kind of complacent about we can handle whoever comes to Washington, or is there a fear factor that if another Trump presidency or another Biden presidency could, spell doom for the relationship?
Well, our foreign minister made a statement on this a few days back, which I think in essence captures where we are. And he said that as far as India is concerned, we have some sort of a bipartisan support in the US, both among the Republicans and Democrats. So as far as the India policy is concerned, I don't think we are worried too much in either case.
Right.
But in generally speaking, I would say that we would be more comfortable if Biden were to be re-elected, simply because this is not the time for the isolationists to win in the United States. The world doesn't need an isolationist America.
Absolutely.
The world needs an engaging America. The world needs an America which is able to push back China's aggression and hegemony in the region, which is able to push back the hegemony, the aggression and interventionist streaks, the abrupt behavior of countries like Iran and
absolutely,
North Korea.
At a time when the world is at war. No, Ambassador Gupta, I get you.
So,
unfortunately, we're completely out of time, but I must rephrase what you just said. It's like now is not an era for isolationism. To rephrase what the Prime Minister said, now is not an era for war, now is not an era for isolationism. It's a very important takeaway that a Biden presidency could indeed benefit the world at large, especially when it's looking at multiple conflicts.
And I want to make one more point if you give me time.
China, yes, Ambassador Gupta, very quickly, 30 seconds.
Yeah, very quick. The other point I want to make is I want to support what this lady from the United States said just now, that there was too much of anger against President Biden, which I think is dissipating now.
Yes.
And which could further dissipate as we move along in the coming 8 months. You know, a lot of people were angry with Biden on the policy towards Israel, on the issue of economy, on the issue of immigration. But these are again areas where I think there is scope for President Biden to make amends, where President Biden can improve.
Absolutely. As Neha said, he has 8 months. So it's 8 months is
and something
an eternity.
Significant is happening tonight. Very quickly, Sandeep, I know you're out of time. President Biden is going to deliver the State of the Union address.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you that it's going to be very closely watched.
Yes.
Every word, every gesture, every stutter of his is going to be picked on.
Across the world. The world.
Could very well set the stage for the upcoming election.
Absolutely. It could set the stage for the upcoming elections. Is it going to be Trump again? Is it going to be Biden again? New Delhi is going to be watching the presidential address by President Biden tonight very closely. Thanks to my panelists and my colleague Neha Khanna for joining us on the News9 Plus show this evening. Thanks very much.